I think it kind of does matter that I'm purple. I mean, I'm purple because I'm literally an alien.
Well, I'm not an alien, but it definitely matters to me that I'm black. Yeah, it makes a difference that I'm white. I know the two of us get treated very differently.
I just think it's messed up to compare me being an alien to you two being different races. You're both human. You're totally biologically the same. Adding purple people into a lesson about human racism makes no sense.
Yeah, that is pretty weird. I think people like the black, white, or purple thing because adding a fantasy race in there helps distract from the actual racism black people have to deal with. Right. My experience with anti-black racism is really specific. Other people of color experience other forms of racism too, but you won't see any of that if you don't see color.
That's an actual children's cartoon. It was produced by the Cartoon Network. I used to watch the Cartoon Network when I was a kid, when it showed the Powerpuff Girls and reruns of the Flintstones. Now apparently it's gone from that to being a vehicle for woke propaganda for children. Look, there isn't enough bandwidth on YouTube for me to sit here and catalogue every example of exhausting wokeness in the entertainment industry, but we do have to talk about this recent edition of Captain America in which the recurring villain named the Red Skull resurfaces, spreading hate speech online in the distinct style of Jordan Peterson. That's right, the villains of our pop culture now are evolutionary psychologists making videos on the internet. And incidentally, in the Captain America franchise, the Red Skull is an actual Nazi. Yeah. Anyway, in Flat White this week, Spectator Australia contributor and research analyst at the Centre for Independent Studies, Monica Wilkie, responds to this atrocity. Let's hear from her now. Monica Wilkie, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you, Gideon. Thanks for inviting me on.
Oh, no, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. Now, let's get right into it. This bizarre comic about making the character who was once an acolyte of Adolf Hitler, I understand, in the story arc, making him a Jordan Peterson-like character as some sort of warning against toxic masculinity and internet toxicity and all sorts of other things. I mean, this isn't even, clever artistically, is it? It's just preachy.
It's preachy and it's frightfully boring, I have to say. I mean, it's just, even if you look at it from a purely entertainment, artistic point of view, if you look at the drawings, if you look at the dialogue, it is just mind-numbingly boring. When you have them talk about taking up the sword of masculinity and 10 rules for life, it's like, ooh, scary. This bad guy's going to keep me up at night.
Why is it that we've gone from telling stories about good and evil and that kind of thing to basically being a conduit for woke messaging like this?
Well, I think it's because the latest crop of artists, and I use that term loosely, artists and authors that are producing fiction, that are producing music videos, are far more interested in using these platforms to push their progressive agenda. Now, as people often point out, which is true, politics has always infused art to a certain extent. I mean, even the character of Captain America, which we're talking about, the Captain America comic books, he was originally devised in the 1940s to basically galvanize America around traditional American values that regardless of whether you're a Republican or Democrat, you all pretty much agreed upon, which is why he was so popular, because they could see themselves in this character and he was fighting an external enemy. But what you have now is basically these characters fighting amongst themselves, and in this case, a Canadian psychologist.
Captain America versus the Canadians, I guess that's the spin. But you're right, and there has always been a representation of politics in the arts. There's always been, it's not new to have political messaging in content for younger people. I mean, I always say Captain Planet did more damage for young minds than anything else coming out of the 1990s. But I think this is different now because this isn't just the case of the cultural elite and a disconnect with the hoi polloi and the masses and their audience. There is actually a derision there. There is actually when you're talking about people who sit around watching internet videos and being toxicized and radicalized all day long, they're basically talking about Trump voters. This is a new phenomenon, isn't it?
What they're basically saying is, it's not good versus evil, bad guy versus good guy. It's if you ascribe to these things, then you are a bad person. You need to have these things rammed down your throat. I mean, I wrote an article a couple of years ago when they made a Doctor Who go woke, and it was all about climate change and all these sorts of things. And it was basically just, again, it wasn't clever, it wasn't unique, it was just ramming the message down. It's like, if you think otherwise than this, you are stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. And the same thing again with this Captain America. And I think it's also because it's just so poorly written that it comes across as particularly bad. But it's saying, if you want to get your life in order, which basically if you want to boil Jordan Peterson's message down to a single sentence, that would be it, then somehow you're bad and you need Captain America to come and save you.
Sorry, I have to ask, how did Doctor Who tackle climate change? Did he go back in time and, throw a spanner in the works in the Industrial Revolution or something? Or
well, firstly, this latest iteration of Doctor Who's a woman. So what it was it was an alternate timeline where the Earth, because they didn't tackle climate change, humans became extinct, and this new form of life came up where they could breathe on carbon dioxide or something like that. And just to ram the point home with that one, the new life forms were called the dregs.
Oh, you are joking, right? Okay, so it really is the artistic class taking direct aim at the literal dregs. So what happens now to the arts as we know them? I mean, will this disconnect just widen? I mean, I've been saying for a while that pop culture as we know it is basically dying. Is meme culture supplanting it? Am I onto something there?
I think you could be on something, but I wouldn't say pop culture is dying. I look at it as more of a recalibration. So you've got outfits now like the Daily Wire, a very popular conservative news outlet that has been doing news and long form opinion for a number of years now. They are now branching out into movies, and their first feature film was very successful with the fans. I mean, the thing now, everyone has a camera phone, everyone has, a laptop with a camera in it because of platforms like YouTube and all this. Everyone is a content creator. And if the old guard of Hollywood and that sort of thing continue to put out preachy nonsense that no one is interested in, and you can see this as well in the gulf between what the critics praise and what the fans actually want to watch. So I'm probably uncharacteristically optimistic about this sort of thing, because I think it'll just shift. I mean, if you look on YouTube now, there's no shortage of brilliant comedy and content that people are putting up. It's just it's happening outside of Hollywood, and that's where people will go.
There is the democratization of media, and there is the the interactivity, and again the meme culture that is making Hollywood and the top-down entertainment industry that we've known obsolete. At the same time, they are getting more preachy, more insufferable, more derisive of their audience. The Hollywood as we know it is going to basically eat away at itself and die, surely.
I think that's a real chance if they don't smarten up and realise that their audiences aren't interested in this. I mean, you can get all the Oscars and BAFTAs you want and all the plaudits from your critic mates, but if people aren't going to the box office, if people aren't streaming it on Netflix or any of these channels, well then people are going to stop sponsoring you. You're not going to get it's basic free market economics here.
What do we do about all this? Do we have to cancel Disney Plus, or will this just self-correct?
I'm a big fan of creative destruction in this. So I think if you are tired of this, then support outfits like the Daily Wire. If you get there are, various tiers of membership and you can do that sort of thing. Watch those content creators on YouTube that aren't funny because they're, preachy and showing a message, but are just objectively funny because they're clever and very witty. I mean, I think you used a very good expression, Gideon, that I use as well, the democratization of communication and entertainment that we have now. It also means that a lot of this stuff is free. So, you don't have to pay to watch a YouTube movie. Sometimes, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But, a lot of this content you can access for free and you can vote with your feet. And I would encourage people to do that.
Absolutely. And I always say, actually, if I had to pick one streaming service and get rid of the rest, I would actually pick YouTube Premium so I can watch YouTube without ads, because that's just about the best streaming service going, censorship notwithstanding. But everybody watching, you've heard Monica, you have to keep supporting outfits like the Daily Wire, keep supporting and subscribing to Spectator Australia TV. And of course, subscribe to The Spectator, join the IPA, and join the CIS as well, who do very, very good work, such as Monica's, not least of all. Anyway, in the meantime, Monica, to you, thank you so much for coming on today. Keep fighting the good fight, and I'm sure we'll be back here very soon talking about the next exercise in woke so-called art.
Thanks, Gideon. It was a pleasure.